Have you ever wondered if reality is just an illusion? Today, we're going to be diving into the groundbreaking world of The Matrix, a 1999 film that challenged our perceptions and redefined science fiction. Join me today as we explore the Wachowskis' visionary masterpiece, a movie that had the technological marvels that brought a dystopian universe to life and set the stage for many imitators for decades to come. Get ready to see just how deep the rabbit hole goes today on PODIO Commentary. Hi everyone, my name is Matt Jarbo. Welcome back to another episode of PODIO Commentary, and today starts our descent into The Matrix. Over the course of the next couple days, we're going to be talking about The Matrix Reloaded, The Matrix Revolutions, and the one that I haven't seen, The Matrix Resurrections. I will be diving into that one towards the end of the week. I'm both nervous and excited because I love these movies. I very much love the first three films, even though the sequels aren't the greatest, but I'm looking forward to diving into them again with a fresh set of eyes. It's been so long since I've enjoyed them now, roughly about probably 15 years since the last time I've sat down to watch the trilogy as a whole. But over the course of the past couple days, I did sit down and I watched my 4K UHD copy of The Matrix again and was immediately transported back to 1999 when I was 17 years old. The movie came out right after I turned 17, right after I was allowed to go and see R-rated movies. And I remember going to that ticket booth and I remember handing them my identification, my driver's license, to show that I was of age to watch this movie. This movie that looked amazing from the previews, this movie that was definitely going to be something that was going to be a lot of fun. And I didn't know at the time that this movie was going to impact me the way that it did. When we got to the shootout sequence in the lobby, I'm going to talk about that. But man, I was in it. I was so in it. It brought me to tears. And I will absolutely dive into that. But for PODIO Commentary going forward, remember guys, this is a discussion show. This is where I dive into movies. I talk about some of their production history, give some of the history, give my thoughts on the film. And then at the end of the episode, you can actually hear your thoughts in the viewer call-in portion of it, right? So for The Matrix, we have a couple that we're going to pull from because this is a new feature for the podcast. There will only be a couple, but I'm excited to see what you guys have to say about this, your thoughts, your experiences. And as always, you can get in on the action by calling our voicemail line 24 hours a day, 7 days a week at 323-400-4956. And again, I will be announcing the movies I'll be covering. I'll give you guys prepped, advanced notice on the movies that I will be diving into. And you can follow me on Twitter at PODIO Commentary or at mjarbo. You can find me on YouTube at 3 Buck Theater or at PODIO Commentary. And it is a great way to follow along with the movies I'm going to be discussing, because as always, if you like the show and you like my thoughts and my opinions and my expression, and you want to hear me talk about your favorite movie, you can always sponsor an episode that will be brought up. And then if you get enough of a sponsorship, I can bring you on and we can have a conversation ourselves. And of course, that's all going to be something that's coming down the pipeline. So stay tuned to the Patreon, patreon.com/Matt Jarbo. But again, I'm not trying to sell you on nothing. I want to talk about this movie. So without further ado, why don't we dive in to the plot synopsis of what The Matrix is. If you don't already know, you could be new, you just want a refresher. Let me tell you guys what this movie is. So The Matrix centers around Thomas Anderson, a computer programmer who leads a secret life as the hacker Neo. He discovers that his reality is actually a digital illusion called The Matrix, created by sentient machines that use humans for energy. Guided by the enigmatic Morpheus and aided by the crew of the hovercraft, the Nebuchadnezzar, including the skilled Trinity, Neo awakens to the devastated real world, where humanity is enslaved by machines. Determined to overthrow the machine overlords, Neo hones his skills and understanding of what the Matrix is. He battles the formidable agents, AI enforcers within the Matrix, particularly the relentless Agent Smith, as Neo embraces his role as the One, a prophesized figure capable of ending the machine domination. The film culminates in a high-stakes rescue of Morpheus and a showdown with Agent Smith. Neo's victory and newfound abilities hint at a broader conflict to come as he vows to free more humans trapped in the Matrix. The concept still, almost 25 years later, because we're coming up on that now, March of next year, 25 years this movie is. It's funny to me how it still remains very relevant to our society now, especially with the invent of AI in a consumer fashion that we've seen over the course of the last year, how that has been a major disruption, not only in journalism, but social media, entertainment even, right? Like Hollywood went on writer strike and actor strike, and both were fearful of AI replacing them entirely, even if it's largely fictional and it's based in an overt fear of everything. It's still fascinating that this movie 25 years earlier kind of predicted where things were going to go. And it's still one that is exceptionally fun to watch, even if you can still kind of pick up on some of the old school conventions that the Wachowskis used, because the Wachowskis had only directed one movie up until that point, and that was 1996's Bound with Gina Gershon and Jennifer Tilly. And, that's a wild movie in and of itself, but they also wrote the screenplay for Assassins, which is one of my favorite Sylvester Stallone, Antonio Banderas, and Julianne Moore movies, directed by the late Dick Donner. And I didn't know that they wrote the movie. In fact, they actually sold that idea and was able to use that as a way to build confidence alongside that and Bound with Warner Brothers to get them to pony up the $60 million that they would need in order to make this movie. Because this is a movie that is highly inspired by the cyberpunk aesthetic, especially the late 90s cyberpunk aesthetic, which at that time, if you really think about it, what we had around that time was like Ghost in the Shell, which this movie is largely based off of in regards to some of the aesthetics, which in and of itself, Ghost in the Shell is based on 1982's groundbreaking Blade Runner, right? So it's all cyclical in regards to cyberpunk and kind of what it all goes back to, I guess. But not only that, it really like took inspirations from other forms of animation, like other anime, martial arts films, and philosophical texts. And if you listen to the movie, especially with what Morpheus says to Neo, that does make a lot of sense. It really wanted to create this like complex narrative that dove into the themes of reality, control, and of course, human potential. But it was set in a dystopian future where reality as perceived by the humans is actually just a simulated environment called the Matrix. And what's interesting about that, if we kind of view it through the lens of where we are now, a lot of our society is kind of viewed through the augmented reality. What I mean by that is go on Instagram, right? Go on TikTok, go on look at your phone, and your phone has the ability, using algorithms, using augmented reality filters, to alter the way you look, to remove your wrinkle lines, to clean up your skin, to clear any blemishes, to make you look prettier in your mind. Not that you aren't pretty, but to make you look more attractive to other people in order to kind of shield yourself from being real in the real world. And that's a lot of what this movie was kind of touching upon way back in the day. But so that's why it's really fascinating to me that we've gotten it, where things have gone with this, right? So when we talk about how the movie got going, like I said, they definitely wanted to gain as much studio support as they could. Initially, their interactions with the Warner Brothers started with the sale of the script for Assassins and then them directing Bound, as I mentioned. And this actually allowed them to showcase that they were able to create engaging and visually compelling narratives within not only the screenplay for Assassins, but then also the screenplay and the visuals and the acting and the story of Bound, which is a very complex story in and of itself. But The Matrix was something at the time that was deemed to be a significant risk to Warner Brothers. They were afraid. They didn't want to actually do it. The project required a pretty substantial budget. And that was $60 million, by the way, as I mentioned before, $60 million for this movie. That was, this is the 90s, man. All right. It's a little bit different. The Matrix, if it was being made today, would have had a $250 million budget attached to it. With needing to gross $750 million worldwide to break even, because that's just how broken our system is now. But 25 years ago, things were a little bit different. However, they were able to get Warner Brothers to jump on board, and they were able to convince them of their capability to realize this vision because they collaborated with comic book artists like Jeff Darrow and Steve Scrossi to create a detailed 600-page storyboard. The storyboard was essential in visualizing the complex world they intended to create, particularly the film's groundbreaking action sequences and special effects, which, by the way, still absolutely hold up to this day. When we talk about how influential The Matrix itself was, that's a lot of what it is. Eventually, they were able to use this meticulous planning and these storyboards to really kind of like win over the studio executives, and they were able to get the budget that they needed. And of course, with that approved budget, they entered pre-production. This is where they figured, of course, out all the special effects, the casting, everything else. The Wachowskis did place a strong emphasis on the philosophical underpinnings of the story. They did require key cast members to read specific books and engage with the complex themes the film explored. This preparatory work was crucial in creating a cohesive and intellectually stimulating narrative. And I really think that, like, in many ways, it was Lawrence Fishburne who sold it, because that was Morpheus's job, was to sell you on the idea of what is the Matrix, what is the one, believing without seeing, believing implicitly, and of everything else, right? And so you had your naysayer, your detractor in Cypher, but everyone else believed Morpheus because Morpheus believed it with every fiber of his being. It was really just the general audience perspective of going through Neo, where we were questioning how much of this was real and how much of this was kind of BS. And that was a really interesting way of going about it. I mean, it keeps the story flowing, but it keeps the characters constantly engaging in the world around them. And again, as Neo starts to believe that he is the one, the audience starts to accept and believe that Neo is the one. And of course, that leads, it's a hero's journey in many ways, right? That doesn't really change. It's kind of the same thing. But it's good storied filmmaking, and it's a really interesting way of putting it all together. Of course, after the movie got its budget and pre-production took place, they started filming the movie in Australia. And this is where they were able to create the bullet time effect as well as the action sequences that drew heavy inspiration from Hong Kong cinema, especially wire fu techniques. Now, this was actually meticulously choreographed by Yuen Wu Ping, Master Wu Ping. I'm mispronouncing it. I apologize if you're a big Matrix fan. The only other movie of this guy that I've seen is I saw Iron Fist, right after The Matrix came out. They had re-released it in the States or something, and I watched Iron Fist and it was amazing. And he worked on that one. He's been around for years. Like his reputation precedes him, even if I'm not the most familiar with his works as of yet. The goal of PODIO Commentary is not only to discuss movies, their origins, their histories, the trivia, the things contained within, but it's also a nice way for me to explore films I haven't yet seen, or I haven't seen in quite some time. So I really enjoy the fact that I'm learning all of this in many ways, like you guys. So The Matrix itself was released in March of 1999 and quickly became a box office success. It did redefine the possibilities of the science fiction genre, coming out right before Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. You guys got to understand that. This movie came out right before Star Wars, like a few weeks before Star Wars came out. And then it even came out before Dark City, which had dropped, I believe, towards the end of the year. Or maybe that was the year prior. I forget if Dark City was 98 or 99. It might have been. It might have been 98. I might be wrong on that one. But either way, like, it was at this time where like dark noir-esque sci-fi was kind of like really doing okay. You know, people were paying attention to it because there was a direct to home video film at the end of 99 called Existenz by David Lynch, which is a kind of at the time when I saw it, and I will do a deeper dive on Existenz, but it kind of felt like it was set in the same kind of idea of The Matrix, people going into a video game where, you know, if you die in the video game, you die in real life sort of thing. But it was a really interesting movie. Or is it Lynch or is it Cronenberg? I don't remember which David it was. Somebody will correct me, but that's okay. So the movie, like I said, did quite well. It did $460 million globally against that paltry $63 million budget, which, having that level of success for a movie like The Matrix at that time was pretty big. for a new IP, a new property. The 90s were a wild time for this kind of stuff. I feel like the 2020s and whatever, we've moved away from that because everything feels like it's kind of cookie cutter, and that might actually be what Resurrections is kind of pulling from my understanding. But let's talk about the movie itself, because I do feel that the movie itself is something that is really just, it's done so well over the years. Because obviously we start off with the opening action scene with Trinity talking to Cypher, talking about the One, setting up what it is, setting up the dangerousness of the agents, their ability to take over NPCs, if you will, other people. Which my question then becomes, what happens to the consciousness of those people when they're taken over by agents? Are they just Control-Alt-Deleted? Are they liquefied and used to feed everybody else? I have no idea, because they don't really explain that, but it's cool nonetheless that they have the ability to jump into whatever consciousness they want, take over that particular person's body, like the virus that they are, which is really interesting because that's something that Agent Smith compares humanity to. Correctly, I might add. We're pretty bad at that, but they themselves are also a virus. And there's a bit of hypocrisy there, or at least maybe a lack of, self-awareness, so to speak. But that being said, we get that excellent opening sequence, and then from there we meet Neo. And the early conventions of filmmaking used in the opening of the movie feel kind of like they're playing it safe, right? And I don't want to say they're playing it safe. What I mean is like they're trying to play up an aesthetic. Like Neo gets captured by the agents, and then we cut to that wall of security camera screens, and then it just kind of zooms in and kind of has this green filter to it, which is throughout the entire movie, and that was done as an aesthetic. But I found, like, watching it again, like, you could tell it was trying to be something unique. It was trying something different in the way that it was expressing itself visually. Kind of like, I mean, it's a little bit kind of cheesy now, to be honest with you. Like, I feel like the first, 20 minutes of the movie are a little bit on the cheesy side until Neo meets with Morpheus for the first time and he takes the red pill and goes into the Matrix. Like, once that happens, the movie just picks up with this pace that, doesn't really stop until the end of the film. And that's the thing I really enjoyed about it, was just like, here's your initial setup, normal, average, everyday, late night hacker Neo trying to find what the Matrix is. And what we get is so weird. We get these little tidbits in the very beginning of the movie when he's asleep at his computer, and before the computer gets taken over by Trinity and tells him to wake up. It's interesting because he's looking at a bunch of, scanned paper, newspaper clippings, Morpheus almost captured. Who is Morpheus? And he's meant to be this well-known terrorist, so to speak, or this very wanted criminal, but we get no real explanation for any of that. It's just side information that I feel it would be really interesting if they explored someone who wasn't Neo, not connected to the Matrix, but also tracking Morpheus through all of those events, where we got to see that human perspective. We would know what it is, but the human wouldn't know what it is. And we'd get more of a story with that to kind of flesh out young Morpheus, if you will. Coming soon to HBO Max. No, they're not going to do that. But I enjoyed that little bit of storytelling aspect there. Then, of course, once he takes the red pill and he's in the Matrix, all of that is still pretty badass. Like the whole notion of just hey man, sit back and we're going to do combat training with one of the greatest montages I've ever seen in a movie, because the whole montage is it's has all the upbeat, techno music and whatever. And it's just Keanu sitting in a chair and just they're like, okay, Keanu, do a seizure. And he's like, okay. And then I know Kung Fu. It's just the dialogue in the movie, the one-liners in the movie, the quotes, really. I don't want to minimize it to just one-liners. There are a couple comedic one-liners, obviously, the I know Kung Fu, the whoa, we know those exist, but they also are coming at us from a guy who is completely out of his element, but also is just yeah, let's do this. This is exactly what he's wanted. He's always wanted to kind of be tied into this kind of cyber lifestyle, if you will. That's the vibe that I got, at least. But still, when you have Tank, going through all the programs and everything, and it establishes that he can learn all of this stuff instantaneously. Now, this movie came out, I was a senior in high school. I was jealous, man. I was super jealous because I was like, what the hell? What in the absolute hell? This is a movie that I really, really, really like. I want that to be a reality. Can I just like sit down and we put something on my head and I now all of a sudden know like geometry? This could work. Just imagine our education system if we start using that as a way to teach people. We'd be smart. But anyway, the I know kung fu and the show me part going into the dojo showdown, obviously showcasing what is capable of combat in the Matrix, and also using all of those abilities for combat training in order to fight Morpheus and everything. I thought that was great. I just really loved that. I also loved that was kind of replicated a couple years later in the Final Flight of the Osiris, the first short for the Animatrix that came out, kind of leading into Matrix Reloaded. Before even that anthology DVD came out. And I love the Animatrix. I think I have it on Blu-ray around here somewhere. I got to go find it and watch it again and maybe talk about it. That was asked of me if I was going to cover the Animatrix this week. It depends. Maybe at the end of the week, I'll feel like I'm in it and I want to do it and I'll watch it. If you guys want me to cover the Animatrix, definitely let me know. Again, follow me on social media. You can also find me on Discord. Like, we'll dive into that later. But anyway, like from there, they go see the Oracle. And the Oracle, the whole "there is no spoon" scene is still pretty iconic, and like the philosophy of that whole thing, that it's like it's not the spoon that's moving, it's like you that's moving the spoon, or that there is no spoon, so it doesn't exist. You can manipulate it any way you want to. And then with the Oracle telling him that he's not the one, obviously at that point setting up a conflict, but that still being what Neo needed to hear, because Neo needed to come to it on his own. Neo needed to not be told that he was the one. He needed to come to that on his own. But then, of course, there was that little thing with Trinity, saying that like her prophecy is that she's going to fall in love with the one and that Morpheus is going to find the one. And again, like Trinity believes, maybe not 100%. She's got, maybe 50% in, 50% out at the beginning of the movie. But at the end of the movie, she's definitely rocking 100% belief. Right. And it basically shows it, right? So her beliefs get confirmed. But then, of course, you've got Cypher and he sells him out to the agents because he wants to go back into the system and be someone of value, be someone of importance. The whole concept of ignorance is bliss. That was one of the key times in my life, my young life, where I heard that phrase and understood the context of it. And here I am, no longer 17, but 41, coming up on 42. And I am looking at this movie and I'm looking at that line of ignorance is bliss, and I'm looking at the way that we are. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you know what? Sometimes, yeah, it would be good to not know as much. And now we're in a world where information overload happens on a daily basis. So that to me is the other crazy part about that as well. So we're living in an age where we have access to all this information, and it's so much that maybe sometimes, yeah, ignorance is bliss, but ignorance is bliss will also lead you down a path of darkness, especially one where you'll almost do anything to be that ignorant because it's self-protection. And that's why, Cypher kills Switch, kills Dozer, kills APOC, right? Like, and then almost kills Trinity, but he wants to smash. He wants to smash. So obviously there's a setup there where he's like, okay, if Neo's the one, now's going to be the time where there's a miracle. And then, Tank is still alive and he zaps Cypher and there you go. But Morpheus is captured. He goes off and he's going to be broken by the agents who are going to use a virus as a way to try to crack him open and get access to anything and everything he's got. So then we get the awesome, the absolutely epic, we're going to need guns, lots of guns. My God, I still love that. I still love that fucking scene. Like watching it again. Okay. Let me just kind of set the stage for what it was like for me watching this movie for the first time. 17, I'm in the theater watching this movie, wholly invested, right? We get to that part, all the guns show up. I look at my best friend. I'm like, bro, this is going to be, yeah. All right. They walk into the lobby of that building and they've got all those guns and they take out the guards and here come the SWAT team and you start hearing spy break for the first time. And then what happens is this epic, massively badass shootout where squibs are taken out, huge chunks from like the wall and the pillars and everything else, and everyone's just getting shot up to hell. And and it's just like, oh my God, like I was so in that scene. I remember, like vividly remember, like I had a smile ear to ear of pure joy and excitement. And I remember tears coming out of my eyes from just like the music and the action and how visceral it was and how violent it was and how crazy it was and how, oh my God, I've never seen anything like this ever in my entire life. How much I liked it, how much I loved it, how much I just needed it. And I was tearful when I was watching this thing, man. I was absolutely tearful watching this thing. And I loved it. I still love it to this day. Still gets me feeling. I don't get as teary-eyed, right? But I got goosebumps watching that scene again. But then we get to the part of the movie that I think has like really interesting filmmaking techniques, and that's the fight on the rooftop. When we cut from Morpheus and it goes to Neo and Trinity and they're fighting all those guards on the roof, the way that they cut the scene together shows you that like it was really, they're shooting around what they're fighting, especially when Trinity throws the knife and it stabs the guard in the head. I mean, it's a quick cut, but our brains are making us think, oh, this is real. And then we get to the scene with the agent. Neo tries to shoot at him. He does the bullet time, or he does his own quick maneuver. And then, of course, Neo does the bullet time. And Trinity's like, I've never seen that before. How did you do that? How did I do what? How did you move as fast as them? You know? And then it was just like, yeah, like it shows us at that point that he has the ability, that he is now basically becoming the one. He's maybe not fully accepting of it yet because there still has to be a sacrifice. Obviously, these kind of stories have that. But then like there's the helicopter and he's like, let's fly it. She's like, do you know how to fly that thing? And she goes, not yet. And she calls up Tank and she's like, I need this like very specific helicopter piloting program. And he's like, hold on a second. Let me find my micro SD card, and just boots it up. Just boots it up right there. That is still, look, the scene's kind of cheesy. It's still a little bit cheesy all these years later, but it's still awesome in its own right. It's weird to say it like that, but it's like, again, it's cool because like of the implications of what it can do, but it's kind of cheesy, and that scene itself was kind of clunky. It's probably the clunkiest scene in the whole movie, all things considered, but it's still pretty great because of course, right after that, we get the whole slow-mo sequence with Neo and the freaking minigun taking out the agents, saving Morpheus. And then from there, we get the final fight with Morpheus and Agent Smith. And that scene is great because he's now coming into his own power. And, you know, Agent Smith doesn't think Neo can beat him. And Neo kind of outsmarts him. But then, of course, we kind of find ourselves back to the beginning of the movie. There's cyclical nature in this, which I thought was pretty great. And Agent Smith understands where, like, the port key is to get out of, if I'm going to use a Harry Potter reference, to get out of the Matrix, waits for Neo, ambushes him, ices him with a Desert Eagle, just clack, 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 right? Just unloads into him. And then Neo comes back because Trinity says, I love you. You're the one. I was prophesized to love you. At this point, she fully believes in the prophecy, and she fully believes in Neo. Then Neo just ends up coming back to life and just eviscerating all of them, right? Or at least Agent Smith completely destroying him, and the other two agents run in fear, and then they get back to the ship and they stop the Sentinels, and the movie's over, right? He says, oh, I'm going to open everyone's eyes and show them the world you don't want them to see. Now that's a bit of a lie, isn't it? Especially when you get to Matrix Reloaded and you realize he hasn't quite done that yet, but then it could also be very much a, you know, segmented process, right? You find maybe portions of the population, free them, but at first you still have to, you know, defeat the Sentinels. You still have to defeat the machine on Earth. Right? In order to really release everybody, you have to go out there and do that. But it ends up being a story for another time. Like I said, this movie is one that has always been with me my entire life, last 25 years. I remember when it came out on home video a few months later, I was working at Hollywood Video. They fired me surreptitiously, told me that I'm banned from the property until once I return the movies I have checked out, which at the time were 10 Things I Hate About You, which, real quick side story on that one, I actually was at the high school where 10 Things I Hate About You was filmed last night in Tacoma, Washington. So that's a weird thing. So it was Office Space, 10 Things I Hate About You, and a copy of The Matrix. Suffice it to say, being the rebellious teenager that I was, I just never returned them. They never cared. Whatever, Hollywood Video's out of business. But I had a copy of The Matrix on VHS, which I very much watched multiple times. And it's just a movie that I really love. I think it's a fantastic film. It still holds up real well. I'm anxious to watch the sequels. I recently, to get ready for this series, I bought Reloaded, Revolutions, and Resurrections on 4K. Those all just arrived the other day. I'm going to dive into Reloaded tonight to be able to talk about it on the next episode. And I really also want to hear you guys' thoughts on this. So if you are listening to this as a podcast on YouTube, you can leave your comments. You can find me on social media. Again, you can also call in 323-400-4956 as our voicemail line. And let's play a couple voicemails from some of the people out there who did call in and want to give their thoughts on the film.
Hi, Jarbo. It's me, Andrew Casale, and I live in Arizona. And what I think of The Matrix is that I think it's a pretty good action flick. And Keanu Reeves does a good job as the chosen one, Neo. And I think the bullet time sequence is pretty impressive for 1999. And his co-stars like Lawrence Fishburne were good too, and Hugo Weaving as Agent Smith. And my question for you is that, you Jarbo, is that do you think that they should just stop the first one and we can get those bad sequels and resurrections? And if so, well, why? All right. Thanks, Jarbo. See ya.
Thank you, Andrew, for the voicemail. I do appreciate that. Should they have stopped making those movies? The answer to that is no, because that's all I wanted back in 1999, is I wanted more. In fact, we had to wait 4 years to get 2 more films. You have to understand, the hype for Reloaded was as high as a Star Wars film when that movie came out. And I'll talk about that when I first saw the movie on the Reloaded episode. But no, I don't believe so. I believe the stories that they've told with Reloaded and Revelations was very much the stories that they wanted to tell. And kind of like the prequels, I think over time they got better. I still really enjoy both of those films. I remember that the last time I watched them, which has been a while, but I remember really enjoying them. Resurrections, on the other hand, again, I don't know. I haven't seen it, but I'll find out by the end of this week. But thank you for that, Andrew. And let's jump into the next caller here.
Hey, Jarbo. Braveheart in Jacksonville, North Carolina here. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I was 19 when The Matrix came out. My cousin and I had each dropped 2 hits of acid and drove to town. We started peeking when we were in the mall, which was scary. Way too many fucking people. So we thought a movie theater would be perfect. At least no one could see us tripping our balls off in there. And remembering the trailer for it, we decided to watch The Matrix when we got there. If you could find the seat we were sitting in, I guarantee there would be claw marks in the plastic armrest from our fingernails. And it was absolutely fucking amazing. As I like to call it, the original 4D movie experience. Love your work, man. Keep it up.
Thank you very much, Braveheart. I appreciate that. I agree with you about the fingernail marks in the armrests, right? And the original 4D movie experience. You don't have to be high to get high as balls off that film. Like I said, I was definitely not intoxicated under any circumstances that time I saw the movie. I saw the movie a couple weeks, a little bit later with my cousin, who was like 4 years older than me. So he made us screwdrivers, and then we went to go see the movie and everything else. But, still, it was an excellent movie. That was such an insane action scene. We hadn't seen anything like that back at that time yet. And yeah, you're entirely right. But I mean, seeing it high on psychedelics is definitely a way to do it. I can't say I endorse that way of seeing movies, but I understand that. Thank you very much, Braveheart. And thank you, Andrew, for calling on in. Now, remember, guys, if you also want to call on in, as I mentioned before, the number is 323-400-4956, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. If you follow me on social media, you'll know what movies I'm going to cover and everything. And so I want to definitely get at least 2-3 voicemails per episode. But it's something I want to do in order to be able to kind of build out the community for Podio Commentary. I do believe that there is a massive thirst for actual engaging in-depth conversation that has come at it from a positive perspective. And that's what I want to do here. If you don't know me, I used to manage a drive-in theater in San Diego. I've worked at a multitude of different movie theaters, some just as a worker, some as a manager. I went to film school. I moved to LA in 2010 and tried making it in the entertainment industry. I've seen Pirates of the Caribbean over 65 times because of the drive-in. I love movies, inside, out, up, down, left, right, whatever. I think they're great. I think they're always a lot of fun to discuss. And my goal here is to be a safe space to have those discussions with you and not be marred down by negativity, useless, unneeded negativity in this world that's already as crazy as it is. So if you guys haven't already, please leave a like on YouTube. Please leave a review on iTunes or anywhere you can. I'll be back with an episode very soon for Matrix Reloaded. Have yourself a great day. Thank you again, and peace out.